Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 5 running back start or sit decisions for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, we're going to be going over every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the notable running backs in every single matchup. But before we get on into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to my channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I'd also like to ask that if you guys are on Twitter and would like to follow me, to please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. The link down below to my Twitter is also down below in the description. So without further ado, let's get into things. We begin with Thursday Night Football between the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. In this game at the running back position, I'm going to be starting Darrell Henderson as well as Chris Carson. Now, right now, Chris Carson is dealing with an injury, and I believe that's why he didn't play so well last week, and that's why we kind of saw the Alex Collins show. So if Chris Carson is healthy and is good to go on Thursday, which is tomorrow, so I understand it is a short week for him to return, if they say he's good to go, then I'm going to believe in that, and I'm going to fire him up this week up against the LA Rams defense. The Rams defense didn't look all that great up against the run last week up against the Arizona Cardinals, and I do believe that when Chris Carson is the guy, he is in the driver's seat. He is going to be the lead running back on this team. Last week, the reason why Alex Collins got so much work was because Chris Carson was banged up. So again, I'm going to believe in the fact that if the Seattle Seahawks let Chris Carson play, that he is going to be the main running back there, seeing a majority of the touches, thus making him an excellent start on the week. Darrell Henderson, whenever he is the starter, it just seems like he is going to completely take away any upside that Sony Michel has. Going into the week, I did worry a little bit about Darrell Henderson's injury and how that would end up affecting him in this game. How much would that affect his workload? Would he get a lessened workload because Sony Michel has played so solid? That was absolutely wrong. Darrell Henderson was the main running back there. Kind of a very similar situation this week with Chris Carson as it was last week with Darrell Henderson. I think Darrell Henderson is a very good running back week in and week out regardless of the matchup. The LA Rams didn't play all that great up against the Arizona Cardinals last week, but I do believe that Darrell Henderson will have a relatively solid game this week up against a not so hot Seattle Seahawks defense. The other players in the game, like I said, Sony Michel, when Darrell Henderson is healthy, I just feel as though you cannot start him. He just does not have enough role in this offense, unless of course he moseys his way into the end zone. Then of course he will be worthy of a start, but what are the odds on that? They're not relatively high. For Alex Collins, again, if Chris Carson ends up sitting, then you are going to be playing Alex Collins because he does seem like he is the clear lead running back behind Chris Carson. But if Chris Carson does end up playing, I'm playing Chris Carson and sitting Alex Collins down on the bench. Next up, we move to England for Sunday morning football, the New York Jumbo Jets at the Atlanta Falcons. In this game, I'm firing up both Falcons running backs. And I know that may sound crazy on paper because, hey, the Falcons offense is absolute dog shit at points in the season, but at the end of the day, they're going up against the Jets. They're going up against the Jumbo Jets defense. The Tennessee Titans ran all over them with Derrick Henry. I understand the Tennessee Titans ended up losing that game to the Jets, but that's probably because, you know, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones were out. So with that said, I think the Atlanta Falcons should look relatively solid up against the Jumbo Jets. The Falcons offense looked pretty good last week up against the Washington football team, but as per usual, the Atlanta Falcons end up choking late in the game to the Washington football team, but it is what it is. The Atlanta Falcons offense is still very solid. Cordero Patterson scored 7 million touchdowns in that game. He scored not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns in that game. If Cordero Patterson is considered a wide receiver in the league that you play, and you can play him as a wide receiver as well, this is a wet dream matchup up against the Jets defense. For Mike Davis, he is, in my opinion, definitely a bunch of steps down from Cordero Patterson in my eyes on a guy that I want to be starting week in and week out. But in this matchup up against the Jets, I expect Mike Davis to look relatively solid. I am going to be sitting down Tevin Coleman as well as Michael Carter. I do believe at one point in the season it will be eventually become Michael Carter time, where the Jets are actually clicking on all cylinders, kind of like last week. But if they're able able to do that for a long stretch of games, then I believe Michael Carter can become the lead back in New York for the Jets. But right now, with the uncertainty in the backfield, if I was to kind of have a gun to the head kind of scenario where you got to pick one or the other, I would tell you to start Michael Carter. But inside this matchup, even up against a not so hot Falcons defense, I just do not believe Michael Carter or Tevin Coleman will have all that much fantasy value on the week. Next up, we move to the real Sunday slate, the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, beginning with the Detroit Lions at the Minnesota Vikings. In this game, I like DeAndre Swift. Now, DeAndre Swift just seems to be a very big risk week in and week out, but he's very high risk, very high reward, because you know that if DeAndre Swift gets like 8, 9, 10 catches in a game, the dude could drop 30 plus points and win you your matchup by himself. Going up against the Minnesota Vikings defense, I expect the Lions to be able to run the ball as well as throw the ball to DeAndre Swift very effectively. The biggest worry is, of course, if the Vikings end up just bending the Lions over and sending them directly to Pound Town, then how much value can DeAndre Swift have? It seems week in and week out he is very risky. Now, he's never going to really completely screw you over, right, and drop like 4, 5, 6 fantasy points to where he completely decimates your week, but there are going to be games where he isn't able to pass that 15, 16 point total that you're looking for with DeAndre Swift. I still think he has a good game, and I still would start him this week up against the Minnesota Vikings. For the Vikings right now, there is a little bit of confusion at who is going to be starting for the team at the running back position. Will Dalvin Cook be good to go? I am not 100% sure. Now, I'm not going to stand here or sit here in this chair and tell you guys that Dalvin Cook is going to be out or that Dalvin Cook is going to be 100% in, because I don't even think the Minnesota Vikings themselves know whether Dalvin Cook is going to end up suiting up or not. So my best guess is that Dalvin Cook is going to play, and if he does play, this is a perfect matchup. It's a wet dream matchup, like I just talked about with Cordarrelle Patterson going up against the Jets defense. The same thing could be said about Dalvin Cook going up against the Lions. But if Dalvin Cook does not end up playing, which is obviously a chance, there's a good chance that that ends up happening, then Alexander Mattison steals the shine. He gets his role up against the Detroit Lions, and I would expect him to absolutely roll the Detroit Lions. So if Dalvin Cook plays, you're going to play him. If Dalvin Cook doesn't play, then you're going to be playing Alexander Mattison. And when looking at the sit category, we have Jamal Williams of the Detroit Lions. Now, Jamal Williams is actually a relatively solid player, and if DeAndre Swift was not on this team, if he was on some other team, then Jamal Williams would likely be a guy that you want to start week in and week out because he has solid receiving upside as well. But it seems like DeAndre Swift is the hot hand in this offense all offseason. Dan Campbell talked about going with the hot hand approach in Detroit, and that is what they've been doing, as DeAndre Swift is the hot hand. So Jamal Williams will be a sit for me. There's obviously a good chance that he could score a touchdown any given week, but here up against the Vikings, I will be sitting him down. If DeAndre Swift was ever to go down, knock on wood, obviously we don't root for injuries, then Jamal Williams would be very, very valuable. Next up, we got the Saints at the Washington football team. But before we break this game down at the running back position, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you have ended up enjoying thus far, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. And whether you are new or not, make sure you hit that like button down below. It helps me out a ton. Back into it, Saints at the Washington football team. In this game, I'm firing up Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is just seeing it's like a complete and utter career arc shift, a complete and utter shift of the player himself, because Alvin Kamara for his whole career has been a running back that he's a very good running back. He's a very good runner, but a lot of his value inherently comes from the receiving game because Alvin Kamara was a big piece of the receiving game. They don't have Michael Thomas right now, so you would think that Alvin Kamara was going to be peppered in targets. That was kind of my assumption in the offseason, and that just really has not been true. Alvin Kamara hasn't been peppered in targets, but instead has been rushing the ball at a career high rate. So with that said, that means that Alvin Kamara hasn't been a bust. Alvin Kamara has actually been relatively solid. He's just putting up the points in a completely different and opposite way as to what many and most people expected. So Alvin Kamara is a start in this game. The Washington football team defense got absolutely pounded in by Cordarrelle Patterson, and by Mike Davis played relatively solid as well in that game. So I think Alvin Kamara is in a good spot here to have success for the Washington football team. Now it appears that J.D. McKissic may just be in the role role that I assumed he was going to be in the offseason, because last season, this man had over 100 targets for the Washington football team. But then throughout the season, we've kind of seen him have these games where he's virtually irrelevant. He does his John Cena, you can't see me type of deal. And then there's other games where J.D. McKissic is mightily involved in this offense. He's getting the third down snaps. He's getting some goal line work over Antonio Gibson. So right now where we are sitting, it's a little bit like last year where he is actually seeing a decent amount of work on this offense. And if that is the case in this game, now again, J.D. McKissic is definitely risky because we have seen the games where he gets that work, where he is the guy similar to what he was last year. And then there are the games where they fully and completely and utterly commit to Antonio Gibson like he's Christian McCaffrey in a way on the Washington football team offense. So which one will it be this week? My best guess, based upon what we've seen this season, is that McKissic will be involved, so that will make him a start on the week. But obviously, Antonio Gibson is still the premier option in Washington for the Washington football team. Next up, we move to the New England Patriots at the Houston Texans. In this game, I love Damian Harris. The Texans defense is complete and utter dog shit. Damian Harris should have no issue running a train on this team. Devin Singletary, who in my opinion is not all that talented of an NFL running back, looked very good up against the Houston Texans last week for the Buffalo Bills. Zach Moss also played well. Now with J.J. Taylor likely in the doghouse. Thrown into the doghouse because he fumbled up against the Bucs, it's Damian Harris season. Damian Harris will be the guy getting a majority of the touches. Now, if you are in a super deep league, I actually think Brandon Bolden is worthy of a deep, like, half-court shot to throw into your lineup and start this week. Do I love it? Of course not, because Bill Belichick isn't the kind of guy that just fully commits into one guy to be the backup. There will be a couple of guys seeing usage. I wouldn't be surprised if Ramondre Stevenson is the lead back for the rest of the season of the team behind Damian Harris. But right now where we are sitting with Ramondre Stevenson being a healthy scratch last week, I believe that Brandon Bolden will be the backup and does have some value, but Damian Harris as the lead back there does seem to have the most value. He should easily be able to plaster the Houston Texans defense because they're just so bad. The real question is, how much receiving volume will he see? Now, he's seen more catches this year, I believe, than he saw all of last season, which is great because we're just 4 games in, so I expect the receiving volume to continue to keep going up. But if it's just like 2-3 catches a game, that doesn't really have too much value, but it is certainly a help compared to having no receptions, no targets in a bunch of games. So I like Damian Harris this week up against a garbage Texans defense. The Texans, they run that three-headed, the threesome, the triple-headed dragon running back approach in Houston, and it just doesn't really work all that well. They have Mark Ingram, they have David Johnson, and Phillip Lindsay. Now, I'm not going to say that it doesn't work well because it actually worked relatively well when Tyrod Taylor was under center. But they have Davis Mills now, and it's just not working out very well. Mark Ingram, David Johnson, Phillip Lindsay, any given week, any of those guys could be the lead back. But this week, up against the Patriots, up against that run defense, I don't really expect any of them to really play all that well. And I was very shocked to see that Stephon Gilmore got released. And then he didn't get released. He actually got traded for a 6th round pick to the Panthers. A 6th round pick for Stephon Gilmore. That was a huge trade. That is obviously something to talk about. Stephon Gilmore has not played at all thus far this season. He should be suiting up relatively soon for the Carolina Panthers. Very interesting trade, but again, the Texans running backs, you just can't really trust them unless Tyrod Taylor was to step back under center, and even when that is the case, you can't really trust them because there's so many running backs getting usage that it's really about who finds the end zone, and it wouldn't surprise me any given week if it was Lindsay, if it was David Johnson, or if it was Mr. Mark Ingram. Next game here, we got my Miami Dolphins at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, if you guys do follow me on Twitter, before I recorded this video, I made a joke about how Tom Brady plays terrible in Florida up against the Dolphins, that the Dolphins are going to roll the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that was a complete and utter joke because the Buccaneers are going to skull fuck the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins run defense is putrid. Leonard Fournette, Uncle Lenny himself, should be able to put up a big game. Now, for some reason, Ronald Jones got in and scored a tug last week up against the New England Patriots. That was probably the biggest shock of them all because when watching the game, normally, man, Bruce Arians really pisses me the fuck off in a way because Leonard Fournette makes one minute mistake or Ronald Jones makes one minute mistake I'm talking about being half a centimeter off on where Bruce Arians wants you to stand, and he yanks you out of the game and throws another running back in. Now, right now, it appears that Uncle Lenny is the guy, that Leonard Fournette is the running back to own on this team. So I think Leonard Fournette has the big week up against the Dolphins, but there is always risk with the Tampa Bay running backs because at any point in the game, Bruce Arians could just get slightly ticked off and throw Leonard Fournette out of the game and inject Ronald Jones into the offense. Do I expect that to happen? No, because Leonard Fournette has just played so much better than Jones this season, but there obviously is always that chance that that happens, but I will start Lenny this week. For the Dolphins, Myles Gaskin, I don't know what the fuck Bruce Arians, or not what Bruce Arians is doing, what the fuck Brian Flores is doing, what this team is doing. Why are we not giving the ball as a Dolphins fan to Myles Gaskin? There is no way Malcolm Brown is anywhere near as good as Myles Gaskin. Myles Gaskin gets the ball, and he actually does things with the football. Man, oh man, is it sickening to watch every single Sunday the misusage of Myles Gaskin. Sit down Myles Gaskin this week. The Buccaneers defense is really solid, and I just don't want to play any running backs up against the Buccaneers, so it doesn't matter if it's Bo Jackson back there. If it was obviously prime Bo Jackson, you're going to start him up against the Bucs defense, but you get what I mean. It needs to be one of those elite talents at the running back position for you to want to go ahead and start them, and Myles Gaskin at this point is far from it. Ronald Jones is going to be a sit because, again, I do believe that Uncle Lenny is the guy this week. Next up, we move to a game of the Green Bay Packers at the Cincinnati Bengals. In this one, I'm firing up Aaron Jones with supreme confidence up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron Jones didn't have all that elite of the game. A couple of weeks ago, Aaron Jones blew the back out of the San Francisco 49ers. I believe Aaron Jones could have yet another humongous game this week. The Bengals defense partially figured things out at halftime up against the Jacksonville Jaguars as they ended up winning that game, but I don't expect them to be able to stop Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Mr. Aaron Jones as well, so I like Aaron Jones in this matchup. If you're in a deeper league, I like Samaje Perine. I believe he is the lead dog there over Chris Evans, aka Captain America, who is behind him. But again, this isn't a beautiful matchup. This isn't a chef's kiss, magnifique backup scenario where the backup flies in and I am fucking waving the flag like 100% aggressively, planting my flag in the ground saying it's Samaje Perine season. I'm not going to do that up against the Packers. Hopefully Mixon returns soon as he is clearly the best running back in this backfield and he has looked solid this season. But right now with Samaje Perine as the lead dog in a deeper kind of a league, I am willing to start him. I'm sitting down A.J. Dillon because when Aaron Jones gets it going, A.J. Dillon is not going to be in the game. He will actually at a point get in the game if they're absolutely butt-fucking the Bengals. That A.J. Dillon will get in late in the game, but on the most important downs when the Packers need to move the ball, Aaron Jones is in the game. Next up, we move to a matchup between the Denver Broncos at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers offense stinks. The Steelers offense is awful. Any type of wording you want to use for how bad the Steelers offense is, you can match any word to it. And the word I will use is atrocious. This offense is bad news bears, but guess what? Guess what? Najee Harris is still a viable fantasy option because he's going to be seeing so many receptions, so many targets. Because Big Ben, he doesn't give a fuck about Chase Claypool. He doesn't give a fuck about Juju Smith-Schuster. He cares about two dudes on this team. It's Deontay Johnson and it's Najee Harris. Every single game, these guys are being peppered with targets all throughout the game. The rest of the guys are left out to dry. Now, Juju did see some solid volume last week, didn't come down with a lot of receptions, but it's because Big Ben, I guess, only knows how to throw the ball somewhat accurately to Deontay Johnson as well as Najee Harris. I actually do expect Big Ben not to be a complete and utter dumpster fire for the rest of the season. Eventually, maybe things will click, but this is probably his last year in Pittsburgh. But Najee Harris, even with that said, even with the Steelers offense looking like complete and utter horseshit, I expect Najee Harris to have a solid game. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. Now, normally every week you can start Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, but you're just hoping that whichever one you start ends up finding his way into the end zone, because they see such a similar split share in this offense. Now, it's not going to be exactly 50-50 on the snaps, but it's close to that. It's close to that, and typically whichever one maybe gets that extra couple of targets or whichever one finds their way into the end zone is going to be the leader in the clubhouse in points at the running back position. This week they go up against the Steelers, and while the Steelers offense is a complete and utter fucking catastrophe, The defense is still relatively solid, especially up against the run. So this week, I would be sitting down both Gordon as well as Javonte Williams. Next up, we got the Philadelphia Eagles at the Carolina Panthers, who just got Stephon Gilmore. But again, I am like 99.99999% sure that Stephon Gilmore will not be able to suit up in this game. I think, at least. So Eagles at the Panthers. Chuba Hubbard is the start. He didn't play all that great last week up against the Dallas Cowboys, but the Cowboys defense is actually really solid, and they are much better than the Eagles defense, so I expect Chuba Hubbard to have a good game. Now, there is still a chance. There are still whispers among the kind of just the things that I've looked at about the NFL, about the Carolina Panthers, is that there is a chance. Now, it may be a minute chance, but there is still a shot that McCaffrey plays. If McCaffrey plays, anytime McCaffrey comes back from an injury. Last year, the motherfucker scored like 30 points. Because when he returns, they give him the 0% workload when he was hurt to 100. It's 0 to 100 real quick, like you're in a Drake song, okay? So if McCaffrey ends up playing, you're firing him up. If not, Chuba Hubbard would be the only running back I'm comfortable starting in this game. It seems like he does have a stranglehold over the running back position over Rolls-Royce Freeman. For the Eagles, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, I just don't trust them. I don't know what's happening with Miles Sanders. Now, all of the signs in the offseason aligned with my thinking that Miles Sanders was going to be stuck in a committee. Him, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott. It was going to be a confusing scenario, and that's exactly what happened. But at points in the season, we've seen Miles Sanders be used in the role that you would want him to be used if you drafted Miles Sanders, where he looks good. But I just don't know when we will see that role again. Right now with Miles Sanders, I'm not in full-on panic mode. I'm not in full-on, holy fuck, let me trade Miles Sanders for a used condom, or let me trade him for a half-eaten bag of fucking Doritos. But what I will tell you is to be cautious and sit him down this week up against a stout Panthers defense. That also means Gainwell is a sit, but at this point, I'd almost rather start Gainwell over Miles Sanders. Next up, we move to the Les Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Derrick Henry just lives for this game. He loves playing up against the Jaguars. Derrick Henry might run for 7,000 yards up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Derrick Henry always just absolutely takes a deuce on the chest of the Jaguars defense. Didn't even matter. When they were the Saxonville Jaguars, when they were really a good defense, didn't matter. Derrick Henry was going to run a train through them. Let me just read off some stats for you guys. Derrick Henry has played in 10 games up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He has had 184 carries for, you guessed it, 1,013 yards, and has scored 12 touchdowns in his career. And that includes the games where Derrick Henry wasn't really the starter, where he was behind another running back. So just imagine how dangerous this man is going to be up against the Jaguars. He is averaging over 100 yards and over a touchdown in every single game up against the Jaguars. He's going to run a train. There is no doubt about that. I expect a huge week and probably the #1 week at the running back position out of Derrick Henry. James Robinson is going to be a start for me as well. DJ Chark does end up going down, which actually meant that maybe Urban Meyer figured shit out there and was actually able to use Laviska Shenault. He figured out how to use James Robinson a couple of weeks ago. Now, the one thing he didn't figure out how to use was his common sense as he went to the bar. Didn't do the smartest of decisions, keeps addressing the team, saying he made all these mistakes, blah, 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 blah. It's pretty funny to watch. I feel bad for his wife. I said it in yesterday's video as well. But James Robinson, take Urban Meyer out of the scenario. Seems like he actually figured out how to use James Robinson, so fire him up this week up against the Titans defense. The Titans defense as a whole is not very good. Next up, we got the Browns at the LA Superchargers. In this game, I'm going with 9-inch Nicholas Chubb and Kareem Hunt. You play them every single week. The Chargers run defense didn't look all that great last week up against Josh Jacobs. Now, sure, maybe on paper it did, but Josh Jacobs to me isn't very good. So I think that if it was a different running back, then he would have looked a lot better. So I expect the Browns to look solid in this game at the running back position. You're firing up Nick Chubb. You're firing up Kareem Hunt every single week. For the Chargers, I'm firing up Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler looked amazing up against the Las Vegas Raiders in that Monday Night Football game. Austin Eckler is clearly a focal point in this offense that they want to be getting the ball to. Staley wants to get the ball into Austin Eckler's hands. It worked out well up against the Raiders. It'll work out well, I should say, up against the Cleveland Browns. For for the other Chargers running back. Larry Roundtree appears to be the backup, but Justin Jackson still is seeing some work, but Larry Roundtree is not going to be start as long as Austin Eckler is healthy. Next up, we got the Bears at the Las Vegas Raiders. For the Bears, Damian Williams is going to be a start. Again, Austin Eckler literally was running the ball. Now, Austin Eckler, it's a lot like with Alvin Kamara, where so much of Austin Eckler's value inherently comes with the receiving game because he's just so good at catching passes. He's good at running the ball too, but you don't really see him get a bunch of rushes every single game. But last week, up against the Raiders, he did get a decent amount of rushes, and he looked very good. Now, obviously, comparing Austin Eckler to Damian Williams may be a little bit silly because, of course, Austin Eckler is a much better running back. Damian Williams is a backup running back. He's in this role because David Montgomery ends up getting hurt. David Montgomery is out anywhere from 4 weeks from now to, I believe, 7 weeks from now with that injury. So that stinks, obviously. Damian Williams is in a good role here to play well up against the Raiders. He looked very solid up against the Detroit Lions last week in relief of David Montgomery, so I'm willing to fire him up. For the Raiders, I'm playing Josh Jacobs. It seems like Peyton Barber may end up missing this game, which gives the edge up to Kenyon Drake. Josh Jacobs, while I believe he is not all that great of a running back, hasn't looked all that solid this season, has looked sluggish. He's still the main guy there, and John Gruden still commits to running the rock with Josh Jacobs, even when they're down in games. So I think Josh Jacobs will have a relatively solid game and shouldn't disappoint you this week. Kenyon Drake will be a sit for me as well in this game because even with Peyton Barber out, he just doesn't have all that big of a role in this offense. Next up, we got the 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals. In this one, I'm firing up both Arizona Cardinals running backs. In order, though, I prefer Chase Edmonds over James Conner. James Conner just has a nose for the end zone. Cliff Kingsbury doesn't give a fuck if Chase Edmonds helped march the team all the way up the field. James Conner is the goal line back. He's going to be in there anywhere near like the 5-yard line and closer. James Conner's in the game. Chase Edmonds exits the game. That's just the game plan for Cliff Kingsbury. If you have Chase Edmonds, the chance for him to score a touchdown is they're like 10 yards out. They dump it to him. He runs into the end zone, which is possible, but I do think James Conner is worthy of a start. But again, you are really hoping for that touchdown. I definitely prefer Chase Edmonds every single week. For the 49ers, technically, both Mitchell and Sermon are startable, but you're never going to be able to figure it out. You're never going to be able to determine which fucking guy to start, and Kyle Juszczyk may just run in a touchdown. I want to see how this offense looks with Trey Lance under center, but with Trey Lance under center being the guy in practice, because we saw Trey Lance last week, obviously, after Jimmy Guap, Jimmy Pornstar, Jimmy G, Jimmy Garoppolo ends up getting hurt, but we haven't seen the Trey Lance, we haven't seen this offense, what it looks like when Trey Lance is the starter in practice all week, what kind of new installations they do in the offense, how run heavy is the team, how does this look, is Trey Lance vulturing a bunch of touchdowns, is he vulturing a bunch of work, so I'd rather just sit both of them down for the week. If it was kind of a gun-to-head scenario, Trey Sermon did look a little bit better last week, so I would say you could start him over Mitchell, but right now, with how this is sitting, I don't love either of them on the week. Next up, we got the New York Football Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. In this one, you guessed it, you're going to start both of the running backs you drafted in the first round. Saquon Barkley has looked solid ever since the reins kind of got taken off of him after the reins were given to him, I guess would be the word. Yeah, that would be the correct usage. How he was actually given the keys to the backfield after being kind of screwed over for the first couple of weeks because of an injury, so I understand why they restricted his workload, but now he's free. He gets all that workload. Even up against a tough Dallas Cowboys defense, I expect him to have a solid game. Ezekiel Elliott, every week you're playing him. This Cowboys offense is chef's kiss. Magnifique. They are very, very solid, and if they're able to get up big on the Giants because of their defense being so good, then Zeke should get a lot of run late on in the game. A lot of people were getting a little bit too excited about Tony Pollard. He's still a solid running back. If Zeke was to go down, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, but unless there is an injury to Mr. Zeke, then Tony Pollard is best sitting on your bench. Next up, we got the Bills at the Kansas City Chiefs for Sunday Night Football. Now, Devin Singletary looked good. I talked about that when we were talking about the Texans up against the Texans defense last week, but that's because that's the Texans defense. That's because the Texans didn't score a single point, and because the Bills were up by 1 million. So Devin Singletary is seeing a lot of work. At the end of the day, I still believe that Zach Moss is the lead dog. He's the big dog. He is the lead running back, the workhorse there in Buffalo. He's the main guy. He's the head honcho up against the Kansas City Chiefs. I like Zach Moss. I also like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is an amazing player, but he is in a good scenario to succeed every single week, so I'll continue to roll him out into my lineup. Final game here, we got Monday Night Football between one of the biggest probably disgraces in the NFL in the Colts versus one of the most fun teams to watch, the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I'm pretty sure off the top of my head, out of the first 5 games of the season, I think the Ravens have been on primetime 3 times, including this. They played up against the Raiders in primetime, I believe, in week 1. Week 2 was up against the Chiefs, I believe, in primetime, unless that was week 3. And then week number 5 this week, they play up against the Colts in primetime. Now, I understand why they put the Ravens in prime time. I'm just saying, that seems like a lot, at least for early on in the season. Jonathan Taylor eviscerated my Dolphins. I told you guys that was going to happen. I talked about it with the Buccaneers running back, Leonard Fournette. The Dolphins' run defense is putrid. The Dolphins' run defense stinks. The Dolphins' run defense is atrocious. It's bad. It is all the words to describe something that absolutely sucks. Jonathan Taylor ran a train on them. Of course he would. The Dolphins' defense is bad up against the run. The Ravens' defense, on the other hand, is a little bit better, but the way that the Colts are going to want to move the ball is by giving the rock to Jonathan Taylor, so I expect him to be solid this week for the Ravens. Now, this is a scenario where it feels like I'm never going to be right, where it feels like I'm just always going to be wrong because I don't know what Harbaugh is thinking. Because I'm not John Harbaugh. I don't know what he thinks. I don't know who he wants to be the lead back here. It seems like it's Latavius Murray because they healthy scratched Tyson Williams, but it seems like they also healthy scratched Tyson Williams because they wanted to give work to Devontae Freeman. They wanted to give work to Le'Veon Bell to see if they have a role on this team. So I expect Tyson Williams to be back, but I expect Latavius to be the starter. So now that I've said that, Tyson Williams will probably be the main guy. Very fucking confusing in Baltimore, but with the value that comes with a Ravens running back on such a high-octane, run-heavy team, you just kind of have to take this shot on Murray. I'm sitting down Nyheim Hines, and I'm sitting down Tyson Williams because, again, I don't know what's happening in Baltimore at the running back position. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It helps me out a ton. I love you guys all so much. And I'll see you guys later with another banger of a video. As always, guys, have a great rest of your guys' day. Goodbye.